Okay. Are we waiting until 9:15? Did we announce that?
I think
Or can we go ahead and
I
start?
think we can go now that we have a quorum and all. I think we're good.
Okay, sounds good. So that you're all ready to go? Colin, we are waiting for the Eagles draft tonight?
Yes.
That's what we're waiting for. Go Birds. Gotta work it in. I watched the David Akers speech. I'll make sure I circulate that to everyone when he did the draft pick in 2018. And with that, we will kick off the Finance Committee meeting of the Lehigh Northampton Airport Authority to order. Sylvette, could you call the roll, please?
Frank Facciano.
Here.
Paul Anthony.
I know he's here.
He's here.
Yeah.
Probably ought to pee.
Robert Brooks.
Here. In 10 minutes.
John Hayes.
Here.
Ron Heckman. Larry Hamburger. Mike Stershik.
Here.
John Strauss.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay, thank you, Sylvette. Do we have any public comment today?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we're going to go right into the pension update. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to John Murray at Mission Square, to Todd, John Kateski, and walk us through our pension updates.
My name's John Murray. I'm with Mission Square Retirement. I've been with them since August of this year, so not a long time. But my role with Mission Square is primarily to meet with employees and participants and educate them, on their retirement, help them get ready for retirement. Today I'm meeting with, about a half a dozen employees right here in this room, and I spend about a half an hour with them and educate them on the different opportunities they have to retire comfortably. So they just asked me to put a few slides together, and I'll just run through them with you. We're going to focus on the 457, and okay, so I guess it's
Power button.
I got it. Yep. Sorry about that. Okay, first slide. The plan summaries, just to take a look here, the Union 401A, the total balance of participant accounts, 756,000, 67 total participant accounts. And it's interesting to look at the difference between the average balance in the accounts and the median balance in the accounts. So it kind of shows you there's probably some pretty big accounts there, that's bringing the average up. The non-union 401A, over $1 million as far as participant balances, 171 participant accounts, and then the average there is 6203, and the median is 3933. So you can see once again that the average is much larger than the median. And then the 457 plan, $4,316,000 in total participant balance. Total participants 196, average balance 22,000, and once again the median's much smaller. So there's some big balances there. There's some big accounts in there. Is increasing the average balance, and then you can see the totals there.
Why don't you walk through difference between 401A and 457?
Okay, sorry about that. Yeah. Okay, so the 401A is
Employer.
So it's the employer money that's going in to the 401A plan. There's different rules to a 401A as opposed to a 457. Like for instance, 59 and a half. You have to be 59 and a half to take withdrawals without penalties from the IRS if you're in certain categories. Whereas the 457, as soon as you separate from service, you can access those funds. But the 401A, as Todd's saying, is employer money. The 457 is completely employee money. Okay. So anything else you want to touch on?
No, I mean, I'll just add something. The Teamsters, that is the Teamsters plan. Other includes the police and the fire and the non-union are wrapped into the other one. So the first one is the Teamsters by itself. The other ones are, everybody else are kind of in the other plan. Again, that's employee money versus employee money is 457, employer money is a 401A.
Okay. All right, so looking at the overall plan status, we've got 253 people actively contributing Those are active employees that are contributing. Then we have 21 active employees that are not contributing. So there's a lot less non-contributing employees. That's probably helpful. And then you have 133 people that have separated from service. So certainly, I've actually seen plans where there's more people that have separated from service than are actively contributing. So the plan balance, I guess, is definitely growing because of that. And then what the other part that's interesting is that how is the money being invested? And if you look at all the money in the plan, the biggest segment is invested in funds that are investing in U.S. stocks. Okay, that's 39%. 29% of the overall assets are in what we call a stable value. It's generally an account that's paying an interest rate, principal is protected, things of that nature. And then you have 23% balance, which is a combination of stocks and bonds. It could literally be 5% bonds, 95% stocks, but there's some balance there. And then the international you can see, and then finally bonds and specialty. And what's interesting to look at is the rates of return we've gotten since in the last 3 years from each one of those categories. And you can see that what's done the best is U.S. stocks have done the best over the last 3 years, even with a really bad 2022. And so you can kind of go through there. And what's important, I think, is when I sit down with folks and they have questions, I just educate them on, what a stock-based fund is, what a bond-based fund is, what a balanced fund is, and help them make educated decisions on what funds they want to invest in. And we also have now the targeted, the Fidelity target date funds that are sort of based on when you're going to retire. So like you're going to retire in 2040, they'll invest your money in a way that's consistent with someone that's going to want to retire in like 2040 or 2045. It'll self-adjust and get more conservative as you get closer to your retirement date. That's something that has been implemented here in the last 6-8 months. That would fall into the balance category there. Okay.
Could you comment on the larger than expected percentage in the stable value fund? That was a surprise.
Yeah, I don't really, other than that's what people have chosen over time. Now, I really only can go back to August and interact with people. Go ahead, John.
John's got a really
Go ahead,
interesting-
John.
go ahead,
Yeah.
John.
Some of these plans go back to 93, 2007, and the stable value fund was a qualified default investment option. So if people enrolled and didn't make an investment decision, they were put in
Just automatically.
And at one point, it was 2/3 of the plan assets. And through education, people have been spreading out more diversified portfolio.
Yeah, we've got to continue that education because over the 3-year period, they lost money with factoring in inflation.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so just the stable value, 3-year return is 1.9.
Yeah.
What about the target date fund that somebody's in right now? What's that return over?
Depends on which target date they're in. Could be anywhere from like 2020 to a 2060 fund.
Yep.
So it could be anywhere from,
They're showing up under the balance fund there.
Yeah, I didn't see, are we benchmarking this? I don't know if it's in the other report or.
Yeah.
Is it in your?
We'll talk about that a little
Yeah.
bit. We'll
All right,
talk
it's
about
in the, yeah.
It's in yours, okay.
that. We'll talk
Second
about that a
time.
little bit.
Second.
All right, thanks.
Yep, no problem. Okay, one of the things I definitely, when I meet with employees, I always reinforce the fact they need to set up beneficiaries for their 401A and 457 accounts. You can see here that 73 of your participants have set up both primary beneficiaries and contingent beneficiaries, okay? And 195 of them have set up primary beneficiaries. So the first, the first two rows there are in good shape. The 139 that don't have any beneficiaries set up in the, in their accounts. And so I have the detail on that, but I just wanted to call your attention to that because that's something that we really work with, to I reinforce that they really need to set up their beneficiary when they set up their account, and they can do so. It's just a lot of people just don't do it. And even after repeatedly telling them, you need to set up your beneficiary, maybe it's something where they don't want to think about, well, what is a beneficiary? Oh, that means I gotta die. So anyhow, I think that might be part of it. But, so I just wanted to call that to your attention. I do have the detail on that.
So just on that part that you run education seminars, how do you chase after somebody that doesn't have a beneficiary?
Well, what I would do, this is what I would do now.
No, what are you doing?
Yeah, what am I doing is when they sit down, I say, let's set up your beneficiary right now.
I get that, and they say, well, I don't want to do it right now. Do we follow up with them?
I mean, I don't know, if I was sitting down with you and I asked you to set up a beneficiary, I certainly would follow up next time I saw you, but I don't know if you'd appreciate it if I kept it. I don't know, I'm just saying.
I
Go
would
ahead.
say this, Paul. Whenever you log on,
Yeah, it
to
does.
this, and if you don't have a beneficiary, it'll remind
That is
you
true.
every single time you log on.
Yeah, but if you're in a target date fund, you're not logging on all the time.
Right, but I'm just saying,
Right.
we tell people, if you get to a certain point, he tells
Yeah,
them,
'cause-
but,
With us, we've run into problems with not having beneficiaries listed on our plan.
yeah, so
It's
a
just
challenge. What do you do?
harass them.
Right. That's all you can do.
We have a lady that does benefits in our office, but you have to, because it's so messy if there's not a beneficiary. And, all right, thanks.
But the worst case scenario is the wrong beneficiary. In other words, that.
Well, also, we've had things that an apprentice had a girlfriend. They were a beneficiary before they top out, finish their apprenticeship. I always talk to them. Maybe this girlfriend you don't have anymore. Maybe you have somebody else. You got to update your beneficiary.
So I do have the detail on that, who those folks are, so if it's something you want to do, I certainly can, and most of them have emails attached to the
I guess,
report.
but for the airport, is there not a liability, but is extra work for the airport in that matter? Tom? If you don't have a beneficiary.
For us,
Right.
it goes to their estate. and then
It does, but
they have it.
is it, extra work for our staff?
How often do we have meetings with employees? For example, with the
Quarterly,
bank.
I meet with
Quarterly?
employees quarterly, and then on a monthly basis, and I'll get to that, but on a monthly basis, we have webinars, that they can go into, but I'm here quarterly.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you remind people regarding the beneficiaries? of those meetings?
Absolutely, yeah.
I think, Paul, we've got quarterly reminders and the system prompts. I'm not sure what else we can do.
And then there's also, he does.
I hear your point, but
Next time you have a taco truck out there, they have to show a beneficiary card. Like, you get 100%.
Or set up a default that goes back to the authority if they don't pick one.
Well, I think that's kind of, she'd probably tell us.
It's also the virtual meetings.
It's a joke.
Yeah,
No, I get it, John. It's just that it's so messy for us.
oh, I hear you. We deal with it at the bank. I know what
You
you're
do,
talking
right?
about.
I'm sure you
Absolutely.
do. It's just
Yep.
it's so much extra work for us.
Yeah.
It
it does.
It includes people that aren't.
It definitely does.
That's a great point.
I have the detail. That is absolutely true. I have the detail. I'll
You might
email,
wanna.
I'll email it to you.
What part is true?
Yeah.
What's that? Oh, of that 139, there are folks that are no longer employed here.
Yes, right.
There's,
It's not an
there's,
account.
it's probably, my guess is it's probably, I don't want to guess, but
No,
there's
I got
definitely
it.
people in there that
Do you meet with them quarterly?
There,
Or just the employees?
basically, anybody that makes an appointment to come in to see me can, absolutely. I don't know who gets those, but certainly they get, so one thing about Mission Square is that when they have a Mission Square account, they're getting, if there's an email on file, they're getting routine emails. And so it's not like they're not, like, no one's making any contact with them, they're getting contacted. So it's actually, you're covered from that perspective. There are a lot of communications coming from Mission Square to anyone that has an email. I just tested that out myself. I have a Roth IRA with Mission Square. I get emails every other week, so they're definitely being communicated with.
And he mentioned that he's meeting with employees, one-on-one, face-to-face, quarterly, but there's also virtual meetings. So
Yeah.
they can do those anytime they want. So those virtual meetings are available all the time, but we also have the face-to-face.
Yeah, so just to show you the engagement, like today I'll have over 10 meetings, but I meet with your employees, almost on a weekly, someone wants to talk to me weekly, and we have virtual meetings, as far as using Zoom or just phone calls and going over stuff. So I'm meeting quite a bit with folks. The other thing we have is, it's been available, is weekly financial planning webinars that go out, and anybody who's, within Stephanie's mailing list here at the Airport Authority gets an invitation to go on to those certified financial planner seminars on a variety of topics, retirement topics and financial wellness topics. I'll be visiting again this summer and again in the fall, so I'll be here 4 times this year, along with my virtual meetings. And of course, Mission Square has a website, and there's a lot of great information on the website as well for educational, when you log into your Mission Square website. So let me just go back and cover this one last slide. And this is from your payroll department, kind of showing the breakdown of 457 non-contributors and 457 contributors between full and part-time, and the median contribution, the average contributions, and then the overall employee counts as far as the overall numbers as well. Todd, do you have any thoughts on that? I mean, that is kind of like your data.
What we try to do, because the 457 is employee money, so that's where we're trying to get the engagement. So the first column, or over to your left there, you can see those are the non-contributors. And it really wasn't a big distinction between ages. It didn't matter. It really just, it seemed like people who had more service were less likely to contribute than folks that were newer. I think some of that just because of the design of the plan. But all employees are eligible to participate in the 457. You see it over here across there. When it says medium, those are percentages of salary. So the average person that's contributing is contributing 7.3%. If they're full-time, 5.4%. If they're part-time. But the medium, smack in the middle, is close to 3 on both of those. So you can get a feel for what it is. Obviously, we're trying to target the folks that aren't contributing with the education because, again, the sooner you get people in there, and they'll realize it down the road. But it is a lot of communication. It is harassment to some extent, as Paul calls it, but you can't over-communicate this stuff. So if anybody has any questions, but you can see the data is, that's kind of consistent with all of our average age is probably in that mid to late 40s. And that's kind of what you're seeing overall in the data. It's not any different one way or another. You do seem to have more contributions on the non-union because of the way the defined contribution plan is set up, because there's a match for them, whereas on the union ones, they're getting their full contribution without a match. So that match, even though it's the same amount of money, whether you're match or not, that match is kind of twisting people's arm a little bit to contribute money. We did suggest that to the unions, but they did not want that. So, all right. I don't know if anybody has any questions on that. So, all right. Thank you.
No other questions?
That's it.
All right.
Any questions?
Just jump back. It's disappointing to see so many non-contributors.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is.
You've got average retirement savings in the United States is about $80,000. The number of people who don't have anything saved is staggering, and you're not going to survive on Social Security.
Correct. We're on the same page. It's just trying to get people to do it, and it's harassment. I'm going to have Paul go there.
Well,
Justin will be there with some bats and make sure we get it done.
Don't you think age has something to do with it too, where you are in life? I mean,
Yeah.
if you're 60,
That's
what
actually,
a beneficial.
Yeah, but-
When you're 25,
When you're 60, you're too late.
yeah, but you're talking about beneficiary, but as far as contributions, that's not actually true. It doesn't matter.
It's a shame, because when you're 25 is when you should put the money away. You get the time value of money, and that matters a lot.
We started
And we have the
educating
same
our young
conversations.
firefighters. We've started educating our young firefighters and really,
Yep.
for lack of better terms, harassing them.
Yeah.
When they first come out of the academy, to start beating them up at all levels to try and get them going early, because they're never gonna miss it when that raise comes and they get the bump. They don't miss it, right? But can't buy that 4x4,
That's
side
it.
by side.
For us, it's the big pickup trucks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we've talked about that too, particularly when you hear percentage.
Talk to people.
And, so to have somebody like John 4 times a year, have the webinars, there's lunch and learns, that has only been in place for 2 or 3 years since Mission Square. Prior to that, the old provider, we barely could get them to show up for a meeting. So it's, as with all retirement plans, it takes a while to make changes, but I can already, from the data that we see, you can already see things changing as people increase contributions to building out their portfolios, to being more active in their retirement. So this is on the DB plan side. There's 2 plans. Between both plans, there's approximately $18 million. They're both invested identically. Why is that? Because they have both the same investment return objectives set by the actuary, Peter, which is, it's been recently reduced. It's currently at 7.25. So for the valuation this year, that's what's going to be used.
Todd, how long ago did we drop that from 7.5? About 3 or
It would
4?
have been this year's valuation, the end of last year's valuation. So it's really in place for this year.
Yeah, it's brand new. And, 7 years, why 7 years? That's basically when you guys hired us. The plans are in the top, third of their peer group, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. And the last bullet point, it doesn't happen every year, but, historically, whenever appropriate and the airport has had excess funds, they have made additional contributions above and beyond their minimum obligation to the plans. And, this action here and this action here actually makes the plans healthier. When you decrease the return assumption, it actually puts more pressure. And by doing those actions, it actually has been making the plans healthier over the years. And Peter has the data, but, in terms of municipalities and authorities in the state of Pennsylvania, you guys are in the top tier in terms of your funding status. And right when we came in, I think the actuarial assumption was near 8% at that point.
Yes, I think it was.
in time.
Yeah, it was.
So over the last 7 years, you guys have decreased it by, 0.75%, where a lot of plans don't even do it. They don't even try to do that.
And for those that are newer to this conversation, this is an annual topic for Todd and I, to make sure that we've got an appropriate rate of return in, because you look at failing plans like New Jersey, like Illinois, their return assumptions are far too high. They can't achieve them, and their percentage funding suffers. And this is something we never want to have to go back and have to make unusual contributions to the health of the plan. This is a commitment we've got to our active employees, our retirees. We've got a couple in the audience here today. So making sure that we are generally hitting that return. We're not going to hit it every year. We know that. It's going to be back and forth. But we want to make sure we've got an appropriate return in place so that the plans remain healthy and it doesn't put an inordinate strain on the organization in the future. So I look at this as one of our more important functions.
Yeah, it's been
Is
great.
the 7.25 where you think it should be?
I still would have gone to 7, but I can live at 7.25. 8 was far too high.
John, you'd go down to 5.
Paul, when I plot my own, I use 5.
And the other thing you want to point out is we did use the updated mortality tables, which actually had a bigger impact on the funding level than reducing the rate of return, because those updated mortality tables reflecting the fact that people are living longer means that the fund needs more money. So those two actually lowered our funding level at the end of last year from what it was.
Also go back to something Todd reminded me every year for the 7 or 8 years we've been having the conversation. with the excess payments that we were making, the excess contributions, and that mitigated to a large extent the higher return assumption. If you're putting excess cash in, that lowers it, and that's a good approach. Problem is that approach is voluntary, and we're all here now and taking care of it in that fashion. We don't know who's going to be sitting in our seats, who's going to be sitting in your seats 10 or 15 years from now. Putting this in place would force an overt action to be taken to increase the rate of return, which would increase risk, rather than allow some shifting. So since we were doing it anyway for many years, and Todd had made sure that we did, it just made sense to decrease the return assumption so that it's memorialized.
And I know that's a long presentation, it's the blue book, so we're just gonna touch on a couple market slides and then some summaries about the plan. So this is a living chart, we show it every time. On the bottom is calendar years, it's the chart is of the S&P 500. And the only thing that, near the end is kind of, the recent years. So this right here, March 2020, this was the COVID sell-off, this was the rebound. And then 2022, I think John mentioned it. I mean, it was one of the hardest years for a diversified investor. Why was that? Because two things happened that year which we commonly don't see. Usually when we see a decline in the market of 25%, we see bonds appreciate. This year, or that time period, it was because we're going down that caused the equity markets to decline. And then we've had this rebound. And why is that? And most of it is because the rate increases that we've seen from the Federal Reserve, everybody expects them actually to flip course, and we're actually going into a rate cutting environment. And in January of this year, they thought there was going to be 5 rate cuts this year, which is hard to believe. But right now, the probabilities dropped down to 3 rate cuts. And this morning, the GDP numbers came out. Things are slowing quicker.
And somehow 10-year Treasury went up.
Yeah.
So I figured that one out.
Yeah, so, right now, the market, in our opinion, is somewhere near fair value. I mean, corporate earnings are good. There's the wealth effect going on because portfolios are at all-time high, so people feel wealthier. And there's another chart that relates to the airport we're going to show that, people are very active out there. But this was something unique that we don't see a lot. This was last year. So I don't know if you've heard about the Magnificent Seven, but it's the 7 largest stocks in the S&P 500. And they're Apple, Google, Amazon, Meta, which is Facebook, Microsoft, NVIDIA, and Tesla. And last year, the S&P was up 26%, and they drove almost 2/3 of that return. And that's what this blue line is. Last year, those 7 names were up 108%. These are the other 493 names in the market. But at one point last year, when the market was up 20%, the other 4, so this is percent return, the other 493 names in the S&P 500 were actually flat, 0. While the index was up 20%, it was being driven all by those 7 names. And then other than Tesla and Apple, that has continued into 2024. The good news for the people in this room is you own these guys. Why do you own them? Because you have over half your assets in the S&P or in index fund, with a big portion being the S&P 500. And you can sit there and say, oh, the market only went up because of those 7 names, but it still went up. And to participate in it, especially like a generational move last year, is important, especially when you're a long-term investor. Okay. This ties back to 2022. We show this too. It's just called the yield curve, but pay attention down here. These are maturities. So 10Y stands for 10 years. And this is where it was in January 22 before we had the sell-off. And that blue line at the top is as of March, just a couple weeks ago. And you could take any point of like the front end is where the Fed controls. So back in 2022, a 5-year Treasury was going to pay you 1.3% a year for 5 years. Today, if you go up, I can't say it, it's 4.4. So it was that shift in interest rates that caused the equity markets to fall in 2022. And this over here is called an inverted yield curve, which doesn't exist a lot. And that's why a lot of people are believing that the Fed's going to cut rates, because that can't exist for a long period of time. This is what's called a normal yield curve. All that means is the longer you give your money to the U.S. government, the higher the interest rate, just like a CD. A 2-year CD pays more than a 1-year CD. A 5-year CD pays more than a 2-year CD. So, yeah. So-
Hey, we're inverted too.
Yeah, on the front, yeah.
Yeah.
So either this end of the curve has to go up to look like this, or this end of the curve has to come down. But it's good news for the investor though, because, people that are retired, a few years ago, you had $500,000, you're getting 1%. That's, $5,000 a year. Today, when rates are near 5%, that same 500,000, you're getting 25 grand a year, plus anything you might be making in Social Security. So that actually is helping the economy, because people that are fixed income investors, these types of returns they haven't seen for a while. This here is just the unemployment rate. The only thing to take away from it is this was a spike in 2020, COVID. We got up to 15% unemployment. Basically, we're back down, follow the gray line. These are calendar years, that's 1973. We're basically back to full employment in this country. We're actually back to pre-COVID levels. This is an important slide because this is what the Federal Reserve is following, inflation. Inflation spiked the last 2 years, but it has come back down to basically the 50-year average. The headline is 3.8, and February is 3.2. So we're below the 50-year average. But the most important part, though, is that's next year's growth. So we as a country experienced inflation of 10, 15%. That doesn't mean it went back down. Prices went up by 15%. It just means we're now growing at 3.2% a year. So prices are definitely elevated from where they were a few years ago. And we were talking last night. I have three daughters, and we went out to Chick-fil-A the other day, and I couldn't believe it was like $65, for chicken sandwiches and Cokes. And I don't think it's going down. So
No reason for it to,
yeah,
They can get the prices, they're gonna keep getting.
yeah. And this chart, we came across this, I thought you guys would be interested in it. This is from 1967. It's based on a survey that the conference board does, every year. And it's just, they do a bunch of statistical data, but one question they always ask is, do you expect to travel in a foreign country in the next 6 months? And it's at a historic high, and most of the time to get to a foreign country, you're flying. So basically, almost a quarter of the survey participants said they were going to be in a foreign country in the next 6 months, which is usually a sign of the health of a consumer. The consumer only travels when they think they have excess money, unless they're traveling for work, but usually you're not traveling internationally for work. And just to put it in perspective, these gray bars are recessions. The wider the gray bar, the longer the recession. And this was the COVID recession we were in. So I just thought that was an interesting data point you guys would be interested in. 'Tis the season. We're in the election season. And people always ask, hey, who are we rooting for, coming up in terms of finances in the election. So these are the various presidents: blue, Democrats, red, Republicans. And in the end, when you really look at the numbers, it doesn't really make a difference from the markets who's in the seat. What the markets don't like typically, whether all three are Republican or all three houses are Democrat, the markets love gridlock, when at least one party has one seat and the other two have the other two, because then regulations and tax policies don't change a lot. But this graph also minimizes, to put in perspective, that's the COVID sell-off, that's the 222 sell-off. This is the financial crisis in 2008. That's the tech decline in 2001. So, regardless of who's been at the helm going back to 1926, we've had a consistent climb, in the U.S. markets, and that's more on, about the American people than it is who's at the helm. Okay, so we're going to get into the plans. Here's the two plans: the union, non-union. September 15. That is the starting value. Net contributions, withdrawals. That's what the airport has put in, what participants are being paid out over the last few years. So 1.3, you're actually a net payer out of the plans. You take the union, and over this time period, 4.4 million has been made, and that's the dollar value on March 31st. Non-union, it's 10 million as of March 31st. These are the funding statuses. Like I said, you guys have moved the actuarial rates, which depress the funding status. If the funding, if those actuarial rates weren't moved, the funding status would be north of, it would be like 110%. So, to the point, like, it is making the plan healthier by, compressing that funding status. Year to date, no contributions have been made through March 31st. The contributions came in April. They were made they're being made quarterly. But this is typically what you see in a given year.
What was our funding status last year?
I think he had it on the sheet there, it's 91 and
No, that was, I'm talking about the year before.
that's 22 he was showing right
Yeah.
there. He showed 22.
We don't have 23 yet.
No, I know.
23, we have the preliminary numbers.
Right, but what was 21?
21 was over 100%.
Yeah, that's what I
I
thought.
want to say 110 and 106.
It's not because of market performance, we expect that
Yeah,
to
110
rebound.
and 106, it was our highest level, I think, in a long time.
Yep.
Yeah, and this is just cash flows, what you guys see quarterly. We did have a mistake in here. We didn't round that. That should be 79,225. It just stands out. It looks like it's a bigger withdrawal, but it's in line. It's not 79 million or anything. That was picked up. Let me see. So get into the performance of the plans. Oh, this is the allocation. This was set by the committee. How are the plans managed? This is the target, roughly 40% large cap equity, 5% small, 5% growth, 10% international, 40% fixed income. It's what's commonly referred to as a 60-40 strategy. It's very common within the retirement plan world. Why? Because a common return assumption is 6.5% to 8%, and this type of allocation can get you there. The plans are run, almost in sync with one another. There's a little bit of variance just because of cash flows coming in and out, and then these are the ranges in which the plans can be around, the target. And last year, we did have the plans a little bit overweighted in equities through that rally, and it ended up, paying off. So here's the union plan. The numbers are going to be very similar other than some cash flow. So this is the target index, which is based upon that allocation in the back on the previous page. But this is the number back to the 7.7%. That's what the plan has done after fees over this time period. The 7.25 is the bogey, so the asset allocation has worked. It's been a funky 7 years too, between with the government being shut down, the sell-off, the rate increases we saw in 2022, and I mean the plan has come through very healthy. This column here is how much. So this is the asset class, and then these two numbers equal that. That's how much is in each fund. Back to the index. So of the total plan, 8 million, 3.3 is in the S&P 500. It's great exposure and it's cheap. If we go to the next slide, this is small cap growth. International, your international exposure is developed countries like France, Spain, Germany. You don't have any exposure, very little to any emerging market like China, India, Russia, whatever. It's all developed countries. Over here, this is your fixed income exposure. Once again, this is an index. That's the bond index. That's a big slug of your total fixed income component. And, this is, we don't see this often in like 20, 30 years. You don't usually see a 3-year negative return for bonds, and it's all due to 2022, where, a lot of the banks, that's when they were dealing with, that's when First Republic, Silicon Valley, Signature Bank, that's when they were having issues because of rate raising. But like I said earlier in this today, going forward, those rates are going to be near 4% and 5%, which just helps, the investor going forward, because when rates were at 1% for fixed income, you had to get most of your return from equities. Now, when fixed income is giving you 4 and 5%, you don't have to totally rely on equities to get your return. And here, so the whole plan's being run for 0.4. If you look at the dollar weighted, even though you have 2,130,000 in the bond, that's the cost, 1% of a tenth. So the plan is run very, very cost efficiently. And you might say, some of these are what's called active management, where they're out there trying to beat the market. And the common philosophy, and we subscribe to it, is in international and small cap exposure. Typically, active management, works. So, and then there's additionals, if you want to know what the exposure, so this is technically the market, and then this is the exposure you have. And what we monitor here is to make sure nothing gets really out of whack. You're going to be close to the market. And then if some of the participants say, hey, what's our largest exposure? So this is the dollar value, and that's the name. So in the union, they have 236,000 in the largest, Microsoft being their largest holding. You can look at these. This is the fixed income attributes. What we want to make sure here is everything above BBB. Anything, that's because it's high grade investment quality fixed income. Why is that? So if the equities do sell off, usually there's a flight to quality. This is U.S. Treasuries up here. And you can argue whether the U.S. is the safest investment out there, but it's in the financial world it is. It's the cleanest, dirtiest shirt. Even a lot of the international governments still put their assets in U.S. Treasuries. So you have high quality fixed income. Anything below BBB is called junk bonds. We monitor that, make sure that you don't have that exposure there. And then this, we pay a service. It's a third party to, and this is in your investment policy statement that was given to us by the board. And the objective was to be in the top half of your universe. So you look at the 7-year, like this number represents your ranking. So what this saying is, this is the target, this is your ranking in the universe. So you're in the, basically the top third. If you want to know how many other professional plans like you, that's this number down here. So you're in the top third of 814 plans. And you can see where you fall. Each square, if you're interested, represents a quartile. So if you're in this box down here, your bottom quartile plan. If you're in the top box, you're a top quartile plan. And like I said, the objective from early on after fees was to be in the top half of the universe. So the non-union plan, almost everything's identical. There is a little bit of performance different. It's just because of the cash flows going in and out. But like I said, they are run very similar. Like literally everything's the same except the dollar values. Any questions about the defined benefit plans before we go on to the defined contribution? I know there's a lot of numbers. Okay, so this is the defined contribution where John, I guess, left. So this is the Mission Square plan. We help the airport oversee it, just, and we report on it as a third party. So, it's me, sorry. Whoops.
There you go.
Did I go too far? Did it stop? Okay, so this is the summary. So current new hires, other than the Teamsters, this is their retirement plan. They have access to the 457 and the 401A. To the comments earlier, the airport's money goes into the 401A. The participant puts money into the 457. All three plans have the same lineup. It was this part of the restructuring. When we went to Mission Square, there was when we started the project, there was like 40 some funds, but only 4 were being used. And over that time period, we have shrunk it down. So no matter if they're looking in the 401A or 457, they see the same funds. Here, we also wanted to make the index funds available to people, but also give them active management. So the trick is, when you're making a fund lineup, is you want to give them the tools for the person being of any age to achieve any retirement goal. They have the right funds to do this. This year, this was changed recently, it came out of this committee, the qualified default option, and the way the journey has gone from, it was the stable value fund, and then it went to risk-based, where people could be conservative, moderate, or aggressive. Now, it's QDIA is based upon their age. So if they come in and they don't make a choice, they will be put into a fund, assuming they retire at age 65. We went through a search on that, and the committee identified Fidelity, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And now these funds, we have an investment policy statement governing them with performance standards, very similar to the idea with the defined benefit plans. So,
Yeah, just on the investment policy,
Yeah.
John, do we review that occasionally? I don't recall. For our written investment policy.
We do, I mean.
Yeah,
We do, I just don't recall if we.
We probably, I think the last time we did it was maybe 2 years.
yeah,
I mean,
it's
we periodically, we do review it, yeah.
yeah. So right now, it's being updated for those target date funds, because those were new funds
Yeah,
added.
but I would assume we have a written policy, like through the authority, right, on the investment policy, right? And then we approve that. Todd said, it's been about 2 years.
Yeah, we have an investment policy that was approved by our pension committee as part of the board.
Okay.
How often do you bring that in, Todd?
It's been, I don't know, I think the last time we reviewed it was probably 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So the 2 years ago, was that around the COVID era or after COVID? And I was thinking, should we look at it again?
I mean, we could certainly look at it again, we could put it on the agenda.
Yeah, we have a
Since we're,
responsibility.
since we're changing it to include the target date funds, we probably should after the amendments are made.
Yeah.
Okay.
Up until that COVID era, there wasn't an investment policy. That came out of Mission Square, the redesign, the new fund lineups.
Okay.
Because it was kind of like, hey, how are we making our decisions? There were, so.
Right, no, I get that.
Yeah, so we have, the last part is to put the target, because those target index, the target date funds have only been in there for 4 or 5 months.
It was longer than that.
So did I,
We
but.
did it last year, I think it was, they finally got implemented, I want to say September.
Yeah.
I mean, we would put it in there, but they finally, it took a while for them to implement that
Yeah,
plan.
what happened is we had to get some of the documents rewritten because it had to have a retirement age defined. So somebody comes in at 23, are we picking a target date, assuming they're retiring at 62 or 63? And so all the documents were unified through the ERISA Council, Retirement Council, to make it the same retirement age. And this is just a history perspective from 21 to where we are today. But you can see these plans are, they're old plans, and they've been around for a while. But to the current group in this room, I mean, this is the first time in the last 3 to 5 years that it's really been worked on and constantly refining it and making it more of an institutional approach to it. And then, so these are the fund options. You can see where if they want to go passive or index active. You can see the cost that the participants are paying. Remember, nobody in this room has the authority to invest the money into the funds. The participants have to do it themselves, or John, he will help people make those decisions.
How many funds do you have in the plan?
Yeah.
Not including target date.
Yeah, so they were all in that previous
Yeah, I know, I
page.
just didn't have time to count them up.
Yeah. So 12 plus the target 8 and the risk base.
12, and then on the second page, there's 3 more, so that's 15.
Correct.
And, okay, so they have 15 options, and along with the target date.
And the stable value.
Actually, they'll have, the Mission Square plus,
And
right?
as time clicks on, a target date fund will be added every, 5 years, Yeah, so you know what, this is it. So this is the breakdown, how people are using the funds. This is to the comment before, about the stable value fund. It was actually 2/3 of the assets at one point, just because if somebody became employed, they didn't know what they were doing, they would just get the qualified default option. And that's why the stable value, and, and I agree, like, people didn't know that their money wasn't being invested, especially, people that are 25 and 30, they needed more of a diversified portfolio. Then it was moved to this, the conservative fund. If they didn't make an investment decision, this was the qualified default option. And now, based upon your age, these are those funds working. So if somebody comes in, and I can't do the math, but if you're 25, you would probably get the 2065 fund because that associates with their retirement. If you come in and you're 50, you might get the 2035 fund. It makes onboarding a lot easier. Before, it was Zoe or Danita. They're in there, trying to help these people make a determination about how the money should be invested. Now, it's very, very easy to do. And if you want to look at the performance here, the individual funds, the only one that we're watching is this T. Rowe Price guy. They're a household name. They had a struggle in 2022, so their 3-year number is struggling, but their recent numbers are coming back. Their long-term number is still good. It's below where we would like to see them, but all the other funds are performing in line with expectations. And
Right, so just for T. Rowe though, so next year we'll kind of, we do this every year, I think, right? So next year
Yeah.
we'll come in and if they're underperforming.
yeah, I mean, we'll change them.
recommend-
Yeah.
okay.
And that's a good point too. Over the 20 or 30 years prior to this new approach, no fund had ever been changed. So the active stewardship of this room is really on these funds now, making it, people are watching them. And that goes back to the investment policy statement. These indices are named in there. And I think there was a question early about the target date funds and their index. And, so here's the index down here, and, those are the target date. And they're performing in line. These are net of fees. And I think the question was the 3-year, so the target date fund, if you're about ready to retire, pretty much has done 2.1% over the 3-year. If, a longer term, over the 3 years, it's done 5.4%. And, here they are, long term. Here's the stable value fund. I expect those numbers to come up with this higher interest rate structure, but remember, these are annualized, so what's this saying? For the last 3 years, it's made 2.3% a year. And, as the internal committee, when we meet, what are the objectives? Maintain fiduciary oversight through the investment committee, pension committee. These were added. Like I said, there wasn't a lot of participant education prior, so now they have the website, in-person consultation. That means group meetings and individual one-on-one meetings. They do have lunch and learns too, where people bring in lunch. And then this is something Todd has done for 3 years now?
3 years,
Yeah. So every fall, it's a pension workshop. So we meet in this room, anybody can come in. They have questions about what's going on in the plans. Hey, what does this mean? How does this work? And all the vendors are here, and we answer questions as they come up. And I mean that's the summary. And as always, we're always looking at costs, making sure you're receiving the value for what you're paying for, and making changes to the funds when it's needed. It's not like a portfolio to change a fund. So a fund change is a very decisive decision, because there's blackout periods. You got to notify the participants. So when you do make a change, you got to make sure it's needed. The T. Rowe Price, I think their strategy hasn't changed. Their people hasn't changed. I think they just hit a rough spot.
Yeah, that's true.
So,
But just to that point, we're fiduciaries here and we have a responsibility.
yeah, absolutely,
right?
yeah, yes, absolutely. So, those are my thoughts. I think we just covered 70 pages. It's all right, 30 minutes. Yeah.
Anybody have any questions?
You have any other comments you want to make, Todd?
No, I think John and John covered it well. The other John, he's actually doing some employee meetings
Okay.
next door. That's why he had to leave at 10 o'clock. So. I think that's
Frank, you'll take the chair back?
Sure. All right, no more questions? We'll move on.
Thank you.
Thanks
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
You received the minutes, can I have a
If I
motion?
could, Frank, if I could. Sure. Any questions from you guys?
Other than I think Glenn's doing very well.
Just want to keep it that
As a
way.
retiree, I appreciate it.
Keep up the good work, thank you.
I think we have one active employee in the back row.
I'm sorry?
We have one active employee behind you.
We have no complaints, it looks good.
Okay, good, thank you.
Looking for a motion to approve the meeting minutes from March. Paul and Robert, second, all in favor?
Hi.
Those minutes are approved. Financial?
Just more numbers, Todd?
Yeah.
I need another coffee.
Wow. Don't worry, I told Glenn I'd make this short. All right, good morning, everybody. We're through the first quarter, walk through these relatively quick. Justin's excited.
See it? Can you see it?
All right, always start off with the traffic again. We had our best traffic for the month of March since 2004. We're on a pretty good path. You can see we're up pretty significantly versus last year, almost 11%. But again, best traffic since 2004, and the traffic is obviously what moves the engine, so that's good stuff. Comparing our traffic to all airports, our throughput is better than all airports, and again, this is comparing it to last year. We're no longer comparing it to 2019. Our seats down a little bit from all airports, but again, you can always see that we use the seats that we get. That's why our throughput is higher than our seat increase. I don't know if you guys can see it. Comparing ourselves to our peers, again, this is comparing to last year. See, our peers are kind of catching up to us. But if you take out Newport News, we're probably right around the average because everybody else is up with the exception of Newport News.
Which one went into Wilkes-Barre again?
Breeze.
Big difference in their performance since then.
Yeah, and you'll see that, I think, if you go back a slide, Todd, Atlantic City's up. They had a little bit of a lull in 22, so 23 was a nice rebound. But, just kind of looking at what's happening with some of those carriers, you've got Spirit, Atlantic City, you've got, Frontier over Trenton. So, and Spirit and Frontier are still working through some challenges. So I think you're going to see some interesting deltas as we go along there.
Wasn't it White Plains that had Aveo? Or
White
was one?
Plains, I think, is Avella right there.
No.
They're Breeze, okay.
Okay, they had added Breeze a couple years ago, so their growth rates were large. Now they flattened out.
Right.
Yep.
So,
Because again, we're comparing it to last year, not
Right,
2019.
exactly.
Right? So,
Yep.
so it's interesting comparisons when you take out that.
but you can see along our peer groups how much variation there is.
Oh, yeah. And which airport had Avelo? One did.
Yeah, well, I know Binghamton has Avella,
That's who I'm thinking.
but I'm not,
Wilmington has Vello, Wilmington, I don't know which one did popped up on there, but they have Wilmington and Vello.
okay, yeah, I don't think they're on our list.
All right. You can look at where we were for the month of March. It was our best month of the year so far without cares. Had a decent month there. No snow. Who's paying for it? Oh, Mike. Mike's paying for it. That's why he's not here. I know you
Pay
weren't.
for snow at my house.
You sure?
I got kids.
Oh, okay. Just checking.
Send them over to shovel.
But you can see really what's going on here is really a lot of it is our expense management. Some of that's timing. You can also see on the depreciation, some of that is those retired assets that we did in 2018 in the end of last year. That's obviously going to help with the depreciation. But again, we had a good month, which gives us some leverage for the rest of the year. Again, you can see where we are for the year. Not as good as we were last year, but still positive without cares, always something that we're looking at. And a lot of that is due to our expense management. It's really not as much revenue-based as you might think. The revenues are pretty static. It's really a function of our expense management and where we are at this point. See what makes up our budget, or should I say our net income. Biggest part coming from our CARES reimbursement, followed by parking, which pays for all the other stuff down at the bottom there that are part of running an airport. Biggest variances, personnel. Again, I mentioned no snow. And that number really is a function more of benefits than salaries. Salaries are actually up versus what we had budgeted, particularly on the overtime, but some of it in our assumptions and some of it, in some of the things that haven't happened yet as far as, some of the medical stuff hasn't fruition for us as far as some of our costs there. But it's really, most of our personnel variance is really because of benefits. It's really not because of salaries. Depreciation, we talked about that. Interest, bless you. We continue to shop our interest rates to see what we can do as far as interest is going on. Some of the other stuff is really timing. And you can see here personnel versus not personnel. I mean, -6, but again, if you look over here, this is where I focus most of my attention on. Still up 12% versus last year. So still nothing to sneeze about. Non-personnel up 14. That -6, again, is really all based on benefits. And some of that's based on selections, like I said earlier. We assume a certain amount of family coverage, a certain amount of employee with child. So if there are more singles, obviously that saves some money. And then you have some people that waive out, so we don't factor some of that in. So our assumptions, we try to be conservative, have actually helped us out some there. And breaking it down, full-time and part-time, you can see we're not where we are as far as budget. But again, as far as hours, you're looking at FTE hours, and that's really, FTEs are really 40 hours equivalent for everybody there. That's what you have, 240 people working 40 hours. Our actual is 228. But again, those costs, particularly salary costs, are higher than what we budgeted. Personnel, benefit costs down. But still up each and every year from where we were, so that we're continuing to grow there.
How are you finding the labor market now? Are you able to find candidates more easily, or is it still the challenge that it was a couple of years ago? Or
it's not quite what it was a few years ago, but we have our challenges. I mean, I think we were just talking about strategies to kind of anticipate some of the turnover. It's just the nature of the beast sometimes, as people don't understand some of the jobs. We're trying to make them a little bit more transparent so they know what they're getting. Trying to work on some videos so people know what they're getting. But is this the market? I just think people are just like, moving on. Particularly when you're talking about part-time folks, it's like, you can't anticipate them to be here as long as you're with some of your full-times. But great question. It's better than it was, but certainly not where we would like it to be.
Okay, thank you.
Then it's breaking it down just by category. You can see some of the outdoor folks tend to be the folks that we struggle with, and we have more part-time. You see that on airline and FBO. Outside folks, where we have more part-time folks involved and more outside presence, those are more of a challenge. And our cash flow, again, this is just our normal slide for 6 months. It's breaking down. Nothing's really changed. We're still on the same assumptions that we've done on our budget. We really haven't changed that much there. The numbers usually that change the most are usually going to be the timing of our capital and our grants. Those obviously impact our cash significantly. That's why that's yellow there, just to kind of talk about some of the changes. And those changes could be minor, but overall, they usually work themselves out, but from month to month, they do change. And then for this month, because we went to our new cash flow, we wanted to kind of show all the things that make up our 180 number. And that's why we just said 180, just to make it a little easier to kind of digest there. But you can see there, the bond reserve, or what we call that 60 days, 61 days is 4.5. Renewal replacement, 500,000. Contingency, we used to call that the Eddie Reserve, the 5%. And then we have our original 60-day number, which was back in 2019. And then the one we just came out with, which is right now about 34. That takes us up to 180. Just kind of see the breakdown. And this is a little different presentation than we've shown before. This is after all the reserves. That's what we have left at this point, 145. And we're in pretty good shape for the next 12 months from what we see. And you can see the new chart that we put together there for that 180 line there. You see that 334 is what we start with, but obviously you start taking out the 180, you can see what happens to that number. And I think that's it. Any questions? Try to keep it quick for you. Go ahead. We good? Any questions, concerns? We had a good month. Finance guys should keep it short and sweet when you have a good month.
Good job by the team on
All right.
I know it's payroll expense, but.
All right, thank you. All right.
So motion to accept this presentation to present to the board. Robert. And John. All right. All right. Do we
All those
vote
in favor?
to? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Excellent. All right. We have an audit update coming up.
Oh, I'm sorry, I gotta go back up. Wow.
Moving quick this morning.
I know, moving quick. Just wanted to give you an update on the audit. They're gonna come in, they have to come in next month to actually do approval. I know, John and Frank are gonna be talking to them, tomorrow and today, right? Between the two of them. So just to kind of answer some questions as part of their due diligence. No news is good news. I mean, we went through, they had their field visit. We've had some conversations, nothing of any significance that we've seen so far. Always knock on wood, but no, I think we're in good shape, and we're planning to bring that to the board next month. Our auditor will be here to present it at our finance committee next month, and then he'll be on the phone for our board meeting in case somebody has questions.
No adjusting entries other than what we had talked about.
Other than the ones, but that was more on our end.
Yeah.
And I think there was some minor stuff, but nothing of any,
Nothing material.
nothing material of any significance. Again, we haven't inherited any final stuff, but I
Understood.
think we're on course.
I would think if you would have heard if there was anything else.
You would think, but you never know.
True.
All right. Thank you. That's it.
Sit down. Thank you for that.
Okay.
Any new business around the table? All right, then a motion to adjourn. Robert?
Second.
Paul? Oh, I said. Already adjourned. All right, all in favor to adjourn? We're adjourned.
You only need a motion, that's it.
Thank
On
you.
you guys.
Take care, Bob.
55 meetings one day.
Yeah, I got about 15 minutes.
So Justin, they announced about 2 days ago, a flame-throwing robot dog that you can buy as a homeowner for $9,450. It throws a 30-foot flame, and it does 6 miles an hour on the ground.
Oh, okay. Just leave in case somebody has a question.
Yeah.
No, that's fine. I mean,
What is this?
we have
Like a
some.
robotic
It's a
dog?
robot
Yeah,
flame-throwing dog.
we can email or whatever if you want.
Oh, to melt snow.
Yeah, well, and keep the neighbors away, that's the actual dog.
So creepy.
I know, next time. One of these. I don't know,
About firing the flame through the woods.
Okay.
It also has a laser track, so at night, unlike on a foggy night.
Yeah, let's do wildfire. That's a good idea.
See if I can find the video.
Wait till some idiot starts an acre fire in Colorado.
There's the
or something.
laser sight at night.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. Paul, did you hear there is, you can buy a robot dog with a flamethrower mounted to it. Shoots flame 30 feet, it's only
Come back to our
$9,420.
normal.
My kid's into all that tech. Somebody that rents from them, dogs, black and yellow dogs. They're like awesome because it says like.
He's currently
I say, we're still live in here, so if
For
everybody can take their
liability for
seats, we're gonna get started with the
causing
business committee.
Way to take charge of like it.
That's right, I chair this thing. Let's go. Perfect, all right. So welcome to the April 25th Business Committee. Yeah, I guess we should do the roll call on
Justin Grimshaw.
here.
Ann Baum. Don Gottschall.
Here.
James Irwin.
It's on there.
Here.
There he is. And Glenn Friedman.
Present.
Chris Worley. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Any public comment?
No, sir.
All right, I'll take a motion to approve the minutes from March 25th.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Ayes have the sword. All right, we're gonna approve the contract amendments for the terminal connector. I'm gonna guess that's gonna be Ryan?
Yes, we were looking to do that in executive session.
Yeah, so I don't know if we wanted to, we could move on to 3C
Okay.
and go through some of the other items here in public session and then do that at the end.
So we can't approve anything in executive session.
Correct.
But if we want to have a discussion first, because this does lend to potential litigation. And then when we come back out, we can do the vote.
Right. Yep. So you want to do the peer-to-peer and?
Yeah, let's get through it all and we'll go to the executive session at the end.
Okay.
All right, so we'll jump to the 3C, the approved peer-to-peer car sharing agreement. Darren.
That is me, thank you. So this is with Turo. I don't know if everybody knows what Turo is, but as it says, they're a peer-to-peer car sharing company. So I kind of equate it as they're the Uber of rental cars. So it's basically if you want to rent your car out, you can list it on their site. You can rent it to people when they come in here. So you're using your own vehicle just like the Uber folks do. It's becoming somewhat popular. Seeing it more and more around the country. We're definitely seeing it happening here at ABE for sure. So we've been working with them to get them under an agreement so that they are going to operate here. At least we have some insurance protection, indemnification protection, and we get a little bit of money out of it as well. So, like I said, it reminds me a lot of back when Uber was around and everybody was going, oh, this will never work. This is never, and now it has, so this is kind of the next thing. I think there actually are now a few other companies doing it as well, but Turo is by far the largest, so I'm sure we'll see others before it's all said and done. So just as far as the agreement goes, the pretty basic agreement, 1 year renewing terms, however, we can terminate with 30 days notice, either party can. There's some penalties in there for violations by their drivers, doing things they're not supposed to, doing transactions somewhere in the airport they're not supposed to be, having a car that's not registered, things like that. Some liquidated damages for that. Turo basically will pay us 10% of their monthly gross receipts. Unfortunately, the interesting part of that is it's self-reporting. There's no way for us to necessarily track it. So we do have the right to audit if we so choose at some point in time. But again, this goes back, it's exactly how we started with Uber and Lyft, and then eventually there was a technology solution to track that. So hopefully someday we'll see the same thing with Turo, but certainly don't know how that'll work at this point. Insurance recommended by our broker, so $3 million per accident for auto liability, $1 million per occurrence of general liability, and $5 million aggregate. Vehicles have to be registered. Drivers have to have a license. They are subject to a criminal background check. So if we have some reason to run a criminal background check on a driver, we can, and then we can preclude them from operating here if there's a reason for it. So basically, this was drafted by our aviation council because they're doing this with several airports, so they had the template already. So we drafted it from that. Have passed it over to Elizabeth to take a look at as well, and it does contain all of our standard clauses and things and all the FAA required provisions as well. Like I said, we're pretty sure they're operating here. We've seen kind of matching up from our license plate cameras that there are cars that are still on their website that we can see on our license plate cameras. So we can't necessarily probably prove it, but I'm pretty sure they're operating here today. So just looking for approval of the agreement and get it signed with them, and then, like I said, at least we'll have a formal arrangement with them to operate here at the airport. So happy to answer any questions anybody has.
Any questions for Darren?
Just one question. Are they the same insurance limits we have for Uber and Lyft?
John, I have to look for sure, exactly. I'm not 100% sure. I mean, I'm going to say I think so because we just had the same broker review those agreements too.
I think so as well. I just wanted to ask the question.
But yeah, so I think it is. But like I said, I can tell you 100%.
Any other questions? Yeah, I'll take a motion to approve.
No move.
We heard a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. All right, it's passed.
All right, thank you.
Okay, we'll go to the discussion items and we'll go to the capital projects update.
Mr. Chair, good morning, everybody.
Morning.
So just a few updates this month, as we typically do with our capital project updates. We are in construction season now, in terms of runway, started back up earlier this month. You can really see, the light blue is really what's been done. Really where we're focusing on currently is on the runway 6 end, shoulder work, and the new blast pad at the end of the runway. So they're really on the 6 end, starting before they continue down the rest of the runway. In terms of the NAVA's navigational aid impact, same as before. The continuous outage, the FAA is working through the Mauser, which is the approach lighting system upgrade, but again, coordinating with carriers. We talked about it last month in terms of some of those impacts. But again, that's going pretty well. They're actually moving pretty quickly, doing their work when the runway shut down at night when we're doing our construction. Package 4, really in the closeout stages administratively and just some of the punch list. So hopefully the next couple of months that'll be done. We can submit our final FAA reimbursement request, and then that'll come off the list. But they started that up this past week. Package 5, again, started back up. This is the shoulder construction. As you can see the picture on the left. Really what they have to do every night is dig down, get what they need, put the stone in, and then reestablish before they come back in a few months to just pave everything all at once. So it's a lot of work that they have to do in the 11:30 to 5:30 a.m. window. You can see in the middle picture there, that's actually the approach lighting, or the runway end approach lighting. So working through that, and again, some of the electrical components that they're doing as well. So again, biggest thing still coordinating with the carriers on the schedule. A lot was happening here the last couple of days with the boarding bridge. The delivery and installation began 2 days ago, and got some pictures of that, but they're working on that. It takes about 14 days to get that up and running, training our folks and staff. Once that's up and running, beginning of May, around May 8th, they'll move over to gate 10. It's the one thing to note, it's the current existing gate 3. Once the bridge does become operational, we work through it, it'll become bridge 2. So look for more information as we do that. But like I said, on Tuesday, doing a lot of this, bringing the crane in, getting the bridge in place. Again, you see the fixed walkway on the left that's required to bring it up a little bit. Again, meeting the ADA requirements, going out to where the aircraft will park. What they're doing now, or in the process of doing, is mounting the PC air unit, which is what cools and heats the bridge and the aircraft, and then some of the other ancillary equipment with that as well. Parking garage, I know we talked about this last month, but at this point the contract's been executed with AECom. Next Friday, have an initial kickoff meeting to kind of go through what we've done to date since we did the original site selection, kind of talk about that again before we get into the design scope, but just make sure the ADCI team that's been doing some work with some concepts in the terminal matches some of the thoughts that they had. So more to come on that, but we're getting that started here pretty soon.
No, this will follow. If you could jump back for a second. The rendering has the parking deck all on the other side of the roadway loop.
Correct.
So it won't impact any existing parking during construction.
Well, but one of the things, again, we talked about was refreshing the site selection of the location study that was done for the garage. So now that we have, the parking consultant here, we want to refresh the options and take another look, make sure we're all in alignment.
Got it. Because that'll be one of the bigger challenges.
Exactly. Yep. So more to come on that as we dive into that, but that's exactly right.
A really crazy question, but is there any way we could get away with an observation deck on the top floor of the deck?
We've talked about that.
I hear more and more people
Yeah.
that miss the old observation deck.
Yeah, we've talked about that actually, and at that location, that's a possibility.
Okay.
If we ended up with an alternate location, that may not lend itself, but it's certainly something we've talked about at the location that was originally shown.
It's funny, I had 3 people just in the last few weeks.
Yeah, I still hear it.
Yeah.
I still
And
hear it.
one reason was one of the planes that came in a couple of weeks ago.
Sure.
But, yeah, it does attract attention.
Yeah.
I agree. So I mentioned this last month as well, Air Handling Unit 4, which really handles the west side of the terminal over here. Working through really some of the bid documents, but looking, as I mentioned before, use cooperative purchasing for the acquisition of the air handler itself, which is a long lead item. So still working through that process, but more to come, just to kind of update the committee as we're making some progress there. In terms of, again, a busier month of April, this project was completed April 19th, which is our comprehensive paving. Again, Bridge 3 area will be Bridge 2. See on the left, that was the concrete that was there before, and then the middle picture is what it is now. So we've been working through that. And then again, similar with the installation of Jet Bridge 10, once that's in place, they can do some of the other repairs because they're going to have to take Jet Bridge 7 out of service. So coordinating those components to not impact the air carrier's operations. Moving to Queen City, we added this slide. We've talked about it in the past, but just so, again, the committee's aware, Queen City, 2 grants that we received for the electrical lighting and vault replacement, so the kind of the second phase of the runway 1533 pavement rehabilitation that's been completed, but you can see in the image on the left, it's replacing all new LED lighting, conduits, new vault, adding lighting in this section of taxiway Bravo that wasn't there before. That'll probably kick off later in the year, about 60 calendar day duration. We're really working through submittals, purchase or acquiring the vault, because that's a long lead item, and then coordinating the timing of when we start the construction for when the vault is going to arrive. And since we've kind of finished Q1, as we've done before, just kind of a brief update on some of the departmental projects, or the Exhibit B from our budget document. Basically 15 projects, I'll show some of them. We're really, call them projects, but really equipment acquisition and other components have been completed. 20 projects in progress. You can kind of see where we're at to budget. And you can see, so the priority is the numbers on the bottom, 1, 2, and 3. Again, the dollar values, and then the amounts. Again, ones that are in process, ordered, and the ones that have been completed. So again, just some of the, really it is just equipment. So some of the things are spill response trailer, an FBO customer shuttle, maintenance shop press, terminal floor scrubber, and you can see some of the truck acquisitions, and then again, some of our maintenance personnel that actually have to equip the trucks once we get them with radios and all the other components and beacons. So just kind of a brief update as we continue to make progress there. No major changes here. You can see 6 and 7, we added the 1533 lighting that we just talked about, so that'll be tracked accordingly. And as I mentioned, some of the runway, number 1 is really going to drop off once we get that closeout, and then we'll continue to add projects as we go. So again, kind of highlighting what we're adding with the runway lighting at Queen City, and then you can see later in Q2 some of the other projects that'll start getting added to the presentation as we start making some progress on it. Start tracking that with the committee. So I believe that's it. Happy to answer any questions.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
Mr. Chair, may I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead, boss.
Any update on the air cargo that we were talking about, the terminal out there, or storage, I guess, warehouse?
Yeah, so we're currently still going through the environmental process of that. We did have a kickoff call with FHWA last month, and we have another one, I believe, next week as well, working through that process. The other component of that we've found out since then, working with FHWA, is the project has to be included on the local and state TIP, the Transportation Improvement Program, just through LVPC, LVTS, that process. So we've been working with Becky and the Planning Commission on getting that project included. We're part of LVTS, so we're working that as well. So we're working through that component, and then with some of these calls with FHWA, we actually have to be, or it makes sense to be basically a sub-recipient with PennDOT in the grant, because they're familiar with the process. It'll make it easier for reimbursements, contract execution. So that's kind of where we are. We're trying to get some more information on how things need to be set up in terms of us with the private developer, with PennDOT, FHWA.
Okay.
So that's in process. As we get more, that'll definitely be added. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. I was just kind of curious where you're at.
Yeah.
I didn't see it on your list, so.
It was gonna be my follow. What's the trigger that it gets on the list?
I believe, at least at this point, my perspective is once we really know the timing of, so with the tip, I'm trying to explain it because it's confusing from what I've heard from the planning commission folks. There's two tracks of adding it to the tip. There's including it on the draft 2025 to 2028 tip, which has the project modeled with what they have to do in the valley, which adds the projects and all the other hundreds of projects that have been added to the tip, approved by, say, October of this year. The other process that we're doing is, because getting project on the tip is also contingent on the environmental approval, is actually trying to add it to the existing 2023 to 2025 tip, which hopefully we can get that added before October. So if that happens before, I think that's when we can start, okay, the environmental's done, we're at this component, we're working through the grant items with FHWA, PennDOT. So that, kind of a lot of moving pieces, but that's what we're thinking in terms of time frame.
It just seems that there's obviously a need with cargo increasing.
There is.
All the time, and I'm sure there's a need out there.
There is. Yeah, it's a different, certainly a very different process than our FAA grants. So federal highways, even though they're both agencies under DOT, their grant processes are very different. And so, as Ryan mentioned, you know, we're very accustomed to working with the FAA and being a direct recipient of a grant, working with, you know, the first call we had of federal highways, I think we had like 25 people on the call or something. But their strong recommendation was to actually award that money to the state DOT, to PennDOT, and then we would be a sub-recipient under that. So again, more logistics of how that all works, so.
Well, you don't want to make a mistake, so.
Well, yeah.
That would have repercussions.
Right.
Yeah, and what they even mentioned, and even talking to PennDOT, before we had the call, they assumed we would be a sub-recipient to them because they're familiar with the process. They're doing the same with the Planning Commission on that RAISE grant that they just got. So it's their project managers from PennDOT, again, are familiar with the process, so it's making sure we're not missing anything, you know, as we start that process.
Any other questions? Thank you. At this point,
So you'll ask for a motion.
can I have a motion to get into executive session to discuss the terminal connector?
So I'll second.
Thank you. Got a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Right.
Opposed? All right.
No.
You guys
Good. Back.
Recording in progress.
The board went into executive session to discuss contract amendments bearing on potential litigation. During the session, there were no deliberations, decision-making, or votes taken. So we'll now address the contract amendments for the three prime contractors.
Great. So again, talked about an exec session, but you can see here the summary. So we have two of the prime contractors, the consultant team. What we're looking for is to approve terminal connector contract amendments as presented for that total amount of $970,581.
So moved.
Second.
All right, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, no? It passed. We'll send it to the full board.
Thank you.
Okay. Take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Meeting, and we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Sylvette, could you call the roll, please?
John Hayes.
Here.
Glenn Reedman.
Present.
Justin Grimshaw.
Here.
Michael Sturshik. Paul Anthony.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any public comment?
No, sir.
Thank you. Okay, into the action items. First item is approval of the meeting minutes from the March 25th, 2024 meeting. Those minutes were circulated via Novus Agenda. Entertain a motion to approve. Motion by Paul, second by Glenn. Any additions, deletions, or corrections? Hearing none, all those in favor of the subject motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next is approval of the Florio Perucci invoice from March 2024 that was also circulated via Novus Agenda. Entertain a motion to approve.
Make that motion.
I'll second that.
Got a motion and a second, Justin and Paul. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the subject motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, we're going to go a little out of order in terms of the remaining action items. We're going to do the hotel development resolution first.
Okay.
So turn it over to you, Darren.
Thanks. So going back to May of last year, the board approved the term sheet for the hotel. Since that time, things have been moving forward with design and permitting and everything. It's been through the township process. Continues moving positively, hoping to finish everything up and have their financial close mid-August, and then shovels in the ground very shortly after that at this point in time. So what we're looking for today is we just need to formalize a resolution that says we selected Provident as the owner of the hotel, which, like I said, was approved as part of that term sheet back in May. They need the formal resolution so they can use it to go finish up on their financing and everything. So it's really just a kind of a bookkeeping matter to some degree. So we went with the resolution. Elizabeth reviewed it. We had some comments and things back and forth between us and their attorneys and completed it. And yeah, that's pretty much, like I said, at the end of the day, it basically talks about what their mission is and why we selected them as the hotel owner. The resolution was included here in notice. Yeah, I definitely included a copy. So if you answer any questions.
The biggest question is moving along with the original timeline that they outlined, or are we looking at, is it slowing down?
We're probably a little behind where we originally were. Like I said, I think we had originally hoped to be breaking ground somewhere around this time, but it's like hopefully by late summer we'll break ground. Late summer, August timeframe, and then projected opening early 26, March 26, somewhere in that timeframe. Again, that's dependent on whether or not we make it through the winters.
Any issues on the approvals?
No, I mean, we had a bunch of conditions and things. Most of the conditions that we had to do for approvals were because the property boundaries. So, a lot of the things with the township talk about setbacks and things from property lines.
Yeah.
The property here is the entire airport, releasing them a piece in the middle. So a lot of the conditions were just that, so we didn't have to follow a lot of those setbacks. And, we don't want them planting tree barriers and things like that in the middle of the airport, that you would typically have.
Nothing tall.
Yeah, right. So yeah, I mean, nothing, but it really went through the township process pretty quickly, pretty smoothly, so.
Are we going to do the rerouting of the main entrance as part of the hotel project, or does that follow after?
That'll be following after. So we do have some funds to work on the entrance drive, which goes past what was the old economy booth and that whole area. So kind of reconfiguring the roadway through there. I know, consultant team is working on that. You moved on me. And so we're working through that process now. But so we'll have a couple of phases of road work there, but that access, we're trying to clean up that access into the hotel site as in tandem with the project here.
Okay, entertain a motion to approve the resolution as presented.
Motion, John.
Motion by Paul, second. Second. Glenn, I saw his hand go up. Any additional questions or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the subject motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
I'm going to excuse myself.
Okay, thank you, Justin.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, then next on the agenda, we still maintain a quorum, right, Sylvette? We have 3 out of 5.
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, next we'll move then back to acquisition of the property located at 304 Main Street in Catasauqua.
Thank you, sir. So basically, this is a property that has been on our airport layout plan, our FAA-approved airport layout plan for acquisition. It's a residential property in Catasauqua, right off the runway 6 end of the runway out there in the runway protection zone. So it's a property that we need to acquire. The FAA wants us to acquire. We had kind of a long-standing relationship with the homeowner over there because she's had some water issues that she attributes to the airport. So we've actually helped her out several times by pumping water away from her property and things over the years. So when she was ready to sell, she reached out to us. I went over the other day with an LOI and had a brownie and signed it, and we're all everybody's happy. So it appraised a little above that $290,000 purchase price, so we're under the appraised price, we're within FAA guidelines for fair market value. So, I mean, everything, again, fairly simple, definitely a property that we would like to have. So,
Okay, and we have segregated funds set aside for these types of
we
acquisitions.
have money budgeted in the CIP for property acquisition, yes.
So I have not memorized the runways and the numbers and all of that yet. Is that the main runway?
624 is the main runway east, so it's on the
Sixth
west
end,
end of the sixth
Catasauqua
end, so the west end, right in Catasauqua.
Okay, right at the end, I'm assuming.
Yeah, it's like 2,200 feet off the approach end. So
Okay.
there's actually, if you want to pull up the picture, you can show
Oh,
it.
true. Yeah, there is an
I
exhibit.
put a quick Google Earth graphic in here that shows you exactly where it is. So yeah, it's that little red corner down there, red
Okay.
highlighted area down there in the corner, and you can see the runway end up there, so.
So I guess the next question is, are we looking to acquire other residential homes?
Those
Eventually?
Pool.
many,
It's a nice pool.
we've already
That's
acquired.
that's her water problem. It wasn't the airport.
They had to build a pool to hold the water that we run over.
The retention pond.
There are, a lot of these properties in that
Careful,
area
Paul,
are
sir.
on the ALP for acquisition, so we're not.
Careful sinkholes. Kitchen ponds.
Yeah, but I gotta pull at the other end of the runway.
Yeah, we're not actively trying to acquire them, but
But if
similar to
they
this,
become
if they become available, we want to be involved with it, so.
Sure.
Actually, talking to the owner of this one, she did mention her neighbors, which are the one there with the pool, may be interested in selling as well, so we've already passed on that information and say, we're certainly interested in purchasing if you
You
want.
replaced the whole board meetings.
Just make sure we have like one pool party before everything's demolished.
Yeah, I was gonna say, these won't last long, I don't think, as quickly as we can get them into Ryan's hands to demolish, we will.
That's a good plan.
Makes us all nervous to hold on to residential properties that aren't being used. I'm always afraid of what they are being used for whenever we have them, so.
Okay, so I'll entertain a motion to approve the acquisition of 304 Main Street, Catasauqua for $290,000 plus cost and authorize management to execute all documents regarding same. A motion by Glenn, second by Paul. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the subject motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Thank you. Okay, and approval of the authorized signatory resolution. This will be Tom.
So this one's pretty quick, I think. This is really updating a 2017 resolution that provides signing authority for the executive director. Again, we run into these things from time to time. We just passed a motion that allows us to execute documents related to a closing for real estate. Many times we're dealing with banks. I think Todd's probably most familiar with these resolutions. As we're dealing with our banks, a lot of times they're looking for a resolution that indicates that the executive director can sign documents. We really don't have an up-to-date one that provides this, so we're really just looking to update the old resolution that provides this essentially the same, very similar language to the 2017 resolution. So, I don't know if there's any questions on that, but administrative.
Taken care of.
Yes, thank
Yeah, you gotta watch out for those bankers. You know what I mean? Like, you gotta, like,
You're
Glenn, do you have my back?
Yeah.
The only qualification I throw in that is its assets over $1 billion. Not 630 million, so I'm under that one. Okay, I'd entertain a motion for approval of the signatory resolution.
Sure, I'll make that motion.
Motion by Paul, second by Glenn, I assume.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the subject motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Okay, Tom, thanks.
Thank you.
Got a few discussion items today. Nominating committee, we can handle outside of exec, but the other two would go inside, I believe. That be correct?
I don't think we need to do the departmental update this time, Steve.
No, doesn't.
Okay.
Doesn't need to be.
Everybody's going to get assigned seats from now on. So.
Okay, and given the number of board members that have bled out of where we are, I think, okay, we're going to do the solicitor legal fees at the board meeting on Tuesday.
Sure.
Okay,
Sure.
we'll cover that. Okay, so we just have a nominating committee update. Larry, thank you.
I want to thank Justin and Frank again for being on the committee. It was very helpful, and thanks to those who volunteered for their time and their talents. And we do have a slate of officers. We'll present those on Tuesday and vote for them on Tuesday as well. And at that time, if there's any floor nominations, make it then.
Okay, sounds good. Larry, thank you.
Sure, I'll tell you what the positions are. Secretary Treasurer, Lehigh County Rep, which we don't really vote on, but that's that's assignment.
Yep.
And chair and vice chair.
Okay. And Northampton County rep.
That person's not,
They're not elected, they're appointed?
they're appointed.
They're elected.
I thought they were elected.
Yeah, so I think what we've historically done there is we have Lehigh County board members voting for the Lehigh County
County,
rep,
and
and
then
then Northampton
Northampton County
County
board
voting
members.
for Northampton County rep.
Okay. And that answers one other question I have every year is we elect each position individually. So be chair, vice chair, secretary, treasurer, and then the county reps.
Oh, rather than all at once
As a
approve
Right.
this, oh, right.
Yep, okay, good.
Although I don't think your position gets, as immediate past chair, we haven't had that position filled in a while. I don't know that anyone can really vote on who
Can't vote
gets to
against
be-
me because I am.
Who gets to be immediate past chair, so.
Okay, Larry, anything else?
We're good.
Okay. So I think with that, with deferral, do we have any new business to bring before the exec committee today?
Did you want to do the update from Steve?
I thought you said we didn't have to do that.
Not an exec session.
Oh, I thought we were skipping Steve completely.
Oh.
I'm sorry.
Steve was all happy.
Yes, I didn't see him complaining. Okay, Steve, fire away. I'm sorry, I misunderstood what you and Tom were talking
It's a
about.
public,
Yes,
Public
it's a public
presentation.
presentation. Thank you. Mr.
so
Chair.
not going
Yes.
to like security and that sort of
No,
thing.
that was
Okay.
the IT presentation last month.
So this is, I actually requested Tom to do this because this is a kind of our executive briefing for our full-scale exercise on Saturday. You know, we talk about this all the time. Why do we have to do this? It's kind of an FAA mandated law that we have our tabletop exercise and emergency plan review every 12 consecutive calendar months with our first responders. But we're also required to have a full-scale live exercise every 36 calendar months. Our last exercise was in July of '21. That was kind of postponed during the pandemic, so we actually went 4 years and a couple months to meet the July '21. But we've determined that, you know, getting everybody together during summer vacations or when it's 100 degrees on the airfield is probably not a good idea. So back to April's, which is our traditional time frame for having this exercise. It's a huge undertaking, not only for the airport authority. Our emergency manager, Jennifer Begary, has been the leader for the planning team in kind of coordinating all the different agencies that are involved with just planning this exercise. So it's 28 individuals from 11 different agencies are on our planning team. A good representation of all the first responders and mutually hospitals, the coroner throughout the valley, Northampton and Lehigh counties. We started planning this in November. Multiple meetings, phone calls, and discussions. I think just this week alone, we're on number 3 today and all day tomorrow, and we'll be setting up the airfield. But it gives and offers the opportunity for each agency to not only respond here, but to test their emergency response plans. It's integral. Our airport emergency plan requires that we include our mutual aid responders here on the airfield and that they have input into our airport emergency plan. If we say they have to jump 10 times before they enter the airfield, they need to understand that because maybe their policies only allow them to do, you know, two jumping jacks. Like it all has to be coordinated and work together. The FAA even understands that no airport has the sufficient resources to respond to an emergency. So we talked to our surrounding community. This graph is our kind of who we've talked to. Pennsylvania Title 35 is a law that enables us to talk to our mutual aid responders. There's no fee if they show up to us. We don't charge them to go to their fires. I think, where did I hear there, the big fire up in North Whitehall?
Oh, the trucking company.
70 different agencies were involved just on that scene the other night. So it's a huge lift to have any type of these emergencies at any one spot. But, you know, kind of the breakdown of who's attending. So we even have our air charter operators are here as observers in some of our aircraft maintenance department, local law enforcement, emergency management from Lehigh, Northampton County. PEMA is going to be here. Pennsylvania State Police has a pretty large showing this year, which is a lot better than past years for that group. And all of our 3-letter federal agencies, Basically, at this point, we have 42 participating agencies with about 279 participants, including our victims. So 214 participants, and then we actually have 65 actors that are playing victims. In the past, we've kind of polled our local, our staff, youth groups to get victims in here, but really this year we focused on 3 specific agencies to provide the victims, one of whom works for the hospital. So they kind of have the professional victims that kind of understand how to act injured. And we're going to moulage them up first thing in the morning. We'll be applying the prosthetic injuries, spraying them all down with fake blood. So it'll be, quite a realistic event. We've also had other, ServPro has reached out to us and they're providing our morning refreshments. So they're part of our plan is, hey, we need help cleaning up. And they said, you know what, we'll help you get started in the morning. And the Healthcare Coalition of Northeast PA has taken some of their grant funding that they use for exercises and will be providing lunch for the whole team at the end of the exercise. Here's who's kind of how the event or the exercise is made up. There's one exercise director. Unfortunately, that's me. Colin kind of understands. There's participants. There's controllers. The controllers kind of run the exercise. We have, they just add injects as the day goes along. So we've picked up a bunch of people. Well, now X has happened, go respond to that. So it's kind of, it's a general plan, and then we have injects as to, where we want the exercise to progress throughout the entire event. And we also have safety controllers involved. Those individuals are strictly on site to ensure that the players and actors and everybody out there practicing an exercise isn't doing something stupid to actually get injured. Starting Saturday morning, we'll be here about 5:30 in the morning. Start X is at 8:30 in the morning, but the prep time in advance of that. And kind of wrapping it up on the airfield about 12:30 in the afternoon. And then we have a hot wash afterwards, which is getting direct feedback from the participants at that point in time. So right after the exercise, we're going to bring everybody into the fire station and kind of have a quick run through as to the good, the bads, and the uglies to kind of see what went right, see what went wrong, and which kind of leads to the post-exercise stuff. We'll be on the north side of the airfield, kind of centered on the fire station and the training aircraft. But really that whole area, either simulating roadways, hospitals. American Red Cross will be here to kind of practice their family assistance. So we have actors that will be playing either victims or family members looking for victims.
And the airport remains operational during.
Yeah, we'll be completely operational. So we'll just, this is the north side general aviation, taxiways will be closed. T-hangar tenants will still be able to get in and out of their T-hangars. But that's a good point, John. We're not impacting any kind of normal operations.
Assume the flight crews with the inbound aircraft will be alerting people as to what's going on so that you don't have a plane full of panicked people.
Cars driving by, so we have electronic signboard actually on Ray Street now, but Hanover Township, Northampton County has been putting it on their digital signboards. Okay. That's up on the intersection. Yeah, media, we did a media release. Media will actually be here as part of the exercise, both doing the kind of the news part of the exercise, but we actually have them programmed to participate as media actors, like maybe stand Tom up in front of a hostile media crew asking questions and kind of practice that.
Colin, will we have somebody monitoring social media so we can shut down the what's going on at the airport stuff that will inevitably start?
Yeah, John, we did a lot of outreach prior to sort of what we did with the military helicopters that came through. So everybody's aware, but I'll be on social media for the exercise in itself and the EOC, so I'll be monitoring anyway.
Yeah, okay.
All the county 911 centers are involved in this, and they're all aware that this is
It
going on.
amazes me the number of people whose first thought, rather than calling 911, is to post something on Facebook.
Yeah. Well, plus
all the time.
we're running on all of our FITS boards, exercise in progress. We have cardboard signs that we're posting at the windows in the departure building. So, everyone's showing up here. We have NOTAM, so arriving aircraft, the flight crew will be able to tell their passengers, hey, when you look out the window, it's just an exercise. 'Cause
That can kind of be upsetting when you're taking off.
Right.
Last thing I want to see out the window.
Yeah, so
Do you
it's,
have any, do you have any need for more hostile media crew? I have experience.
not at this point, but we'll put that in our notes for the next time. Yeah, so
Okay,
it's,
that sounds great.
Don, were you thinking about Justin?
He'd be good.
He's not here, I hate to beat him over.
don't worry, our emergency managers are all quite versed in how to be hostile when they're making phone calls to us. So, yeah, it's all cranking up the fire to make it a realistic exercise. Why do we do this? Well, at the end of the exercise, we want to find out, as I said, the good, the bad, and the ugly. I can tell you, number one, and I wish Bob was here to confirm, that the number one complaint after the end of this exercise is going to be communications. Like because of this separation of townships, all that local versus state police don't talk to any locals. It always ends up being that face-to-face communication at the incident scene, and that's kind of how we're staging this exercise, to force that face-to-face coordination between the responding agencies.
I'm going to assume the mutual aid companies, fire and EMS, cross county lines in terms of response. We have somebody that can.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We have.
How are the radio communications between them?
It's all haphazard. I mean, there's some local, regional radio channels, but actually Lehigh County is going through a study right now to kind of come to a conclusion. Yep. We have money budgeted that once they kind of get on a track, we can kind of follow. So.
Okay. Yeah, that's an ongoing issue when you cross county lines.
Yep, and it ends up being everybody standing together at the incident command posts and face-to-face discussions, and then them dispatching their own people. But we'll develop our after-action reports, any improvement plan. But really a huge undertaking by my team and the whole organization for that. Questions, Larry?
I have a question, I just had a comment. I've participated in a couple of these, and it's one thing to do a tabletop demonstration, but when you put it in reality like this, it gives you a sense of how much coordination it does have to have. Fire engines, police, victims, food. I mean, it's a little city almost for a day. But I have no idea what kind of cost is involved with something like this, but whatever it is, there's money well spent because it's preparing so many people for the tragedy you never want to happen.
We've said it to the fire department on a number of occasions. Our goal is to have the best trained people we can and never have to use them.
Yep.
So this fits into that.
So I'm sure following this, we'll have some updates here in the next month or two, depending on what we find as part of the exercise. And then we'll have our tabletop in August. So all this is kind of a progression throughout the year. We have the 3 tabletops kind of building towards this exercise. So the last 3 tabletop kind of been building to kind of this scenario. It's really where having an emergency manager who's trained in this type of exercise development has the vision on how this should be progressed through a 3-year cycle. That's all I have.
Any other questions, any other comments? Steve, thank you. Good presentation, and thank you for all your work to keep the airport as safe as it can be. And again, that is crucial.
It's everybody's on it.
Yep, very much appreciated. Okay, we'd already asked for a new business. We didn't have any, so I'll go ahead and call a motion to adjourn. Paul made that. We're good to go. Thanks, everyone. I'll see everybody on Tuesday.
All right, thank you.